Parts of the Quran and other Islamic writings were in circulation during the time of Uthman, but were not yet collected into one book. How is this possible? Because in the 7th century, the Quran had not yet been created. With me here in studio, of course, as always, is Dr. J. Smith to do so. Hello, Dr. J.
Well, listen, thank you for having me, and thanks for all this series, and thanks for all this time. We're going to these lickety-split, keeping these to around 10 minutes or so, or 8 or 10, so that people can actually divulge it. So it's category by category, theme by theme, point by point. And the point we want to look at now is we're still with John of Damascus, and we want to look at 2 different surahs. One is Surah 2, that's well known, and that is the one on the cow. But the other one is the camel of God. He's referring to it, and Shoemaker is really confronting this and say, how can you have a surah that is not in the Quran today if it has already been canonized 80 years earlier? We're in 730 now, and still he's referring to a part of the Quran in his disputation that doesn't exist. It's not there in the Quran at all. So his conclusion is that John of Damascus must have had what he calls a Qur'an apocryphon with this title before his eyes. He's looking at it, he's referring to it, he's confronting it. It's obviously there, but it no longer is there today, proving that even what Abdul Malik and Al-Hajjaj are putting together is still not the canonical text. And John of Damascus is an eyewitness to this event. 730, you're starting to get the ebbing and flow. Now the Umayyads are starting to lose power, and the Abbasids are starting to come to the fore. So you can see this is at the end of the Umayyad period. We're going to soon move into the Abbasid period in just another 19 years. But still, that's a real problem, because that shows that we're not talking about the same Quran we have in our own today. And if it's not the same Quran in 730, then it certainly cannot be the same Quran if 652. Okay?
That's right.
80 years later. The other one is the Surah 2. In Surah 2 is the cow. Now, there are 2 non-Islamic sources which indicate that the cow circulation was a separate work. And these are from the 8th century. One is a Christian monk named Sergius Bahira.
Wow, what a coincidence. This is the Bahira that is used always to claim that he's the one who inspected Muhammad when he was a teenager to see the seal in his back.
Problem is, he's living 80 years later.
There you go.
So he couldn't have been there to see Muhammad's seal, and especially even when he was a young boy. So here he's a Syriac Christian legend, which written in the late 8th century. This legend of Sergius Bahira identifies a sacred writing ascribed to Muhammad, again, which was called the Book of the Cow and was separate from the Quran. So he's already referring to something that was separate from the Quran. Note, by the late 8th century, Muhammad as a prophet would have been well known. So that's why he uses the word Muhammad, because by that time it was the name of the Abbasid prophet. So that's why he uses it. But notice, it's a separate book. So already you can see this is something different than what existed in the 7th century or the 7th century narrative. Another Syriac text, widely known as the disputation between a Muslim and the monk of Bethel. In this disputation, Taylor refers to this, and it says, the Christian identifies among the sacred writings of his opponent a text named the writing of the cow, which he clearly distinguishes from the Qur'an, naming the latter separately as a different writing. So here you have this a monk of Bethel who is referring to the cow, that's Surah 2, as separate from the Qur'an itself. Again, that can't be the case if in the 7th century this was part of the Quran and it was in its entirety at the time of Uthman. This looks like that this was still separate and still remains separate even in the 8th century, because we have reference after reference that this was part of a distinct separate, chapter 2, chapter 3, and chapter 4 were distinctly separate, but being incorporated and brought into the Quran. These 2 non-Quranic texts, according to Schumacher, both attest to an independent sacred writing titled the cow that was distinct from the Quran, which were both written long after John's treatise, which is 730, concerning a similar writing with the same title. What is interesting is that John's treatise would not have circulated in the same Miaphysite and Eastern Syrian circles that gave rise to these 2 documents. Okay, so he would not have been, they would have not been known of each other. These are independent of John of Damascus, and yet they're both saying the same thing that John of Damascus is saying.
Absolutely. And all of this is fascinating because, the picture is starting to become more and more clearer. I mean, again, we're talking Syriac here, right? And or a Christian monk, John of Damascus. Where was John of Damascus? North. I mean, everything is pointing north. What a coincidence that everything about Islam about its history, about its qibla, about its rituals, about its book, is coming from North. Even its writing, the hadith, the seerah, and the list can go on and on and on. Why isn't anyone asking these questions in terms of those scholars who are taking the mainstream approach, supporting the standard Islamic tradition based on these ample evidence that we have today?
Well, Shoemaker is. Thankfully, he's doing just that.
But I'm saying those who hold to the other view, why aren't they changing their view, saying, oh, we have new discoveries now?
For political reasons, for all kinds of reasons, but we're going to get into that. I'm still not finished with Christians' eyewitnesses to this account or references to this account.
Who else do you want to talk about?
I'm going to talk about Leo III next and his disputation with Umar I. And then we're going to talk about a guy named Alexander, and then we're also then going to go to Al-Kindi himself, the famous Al-Kindi.
Al-Kindi is famous, definitely.
You're going to see why. We always thought that he was kind of a wacko, that he didn't know what he was talking about. That's not the case. But that's for future episodes. We'll get into that next. Back to you.
Absolutely. And I want to, Muslim friends, if you're watching this, please go and investigate anything we're sharing with you. Don't take our word for it. Go and investigate the sources. Go and investigate these accounts. Go and investigate why scholars like Shoemaker, right? Why are they referencing things that were written in Islamic sources most of the time? Pointing to things that apparently were hidden from you, or hidden from me. I mean, the idea that the cow was a different, separate account from the Quran itself. This is news to any Muslim, obviously, that there was a chapter known as the Camel of God. It could be that it's talking about one of the prophets of Islam, but all that to say is that it appears that there are different narratives when it comes to the creation of the Quran, the composition of the Quran, the contents of the Quran, and the list can go on and on and on. This is your eternity, by the way, your eternal life that is on the line, and you owe it to yourself to go and inspect it. We're sharing the information with you. We're hoping that you will take our words for it and go and inspect it. But most importantly, I pray that the Lord will set you free by coming to Jesus. Only Jesus can set you free. So I pray that will be the outcome out of all of this. Thank you again for joining us. Until next episode, this is Al-Fadi, over and out. God bless. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, Seerah International, and click on the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or go live. I would also like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking the link right below. By doing so, you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you where you can give to our channel. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.